live. Welcome, everyone. We are in a webinar, and we will be getting started in a few minutes. I hope you're all warm and toasty this evening. Sharon, how are you? Thank you for joining us. If you'd all like to put in the chat where you're coming. Oh, we have somebody here from Tampa Bay, Florida. If you want to put in the chat where you're joining us from. Oh, we have quite a few people. Well, I hope it's warm where you're all joining us from. It's a little cold here in New Hampshire. Yes, we are getting a big snowstorm on Sunday also. Hello from New Jersey and from Connecticut. And we have lots of people here from Florida. I do hope it's warm for you. Okay. Yes. We do have a Manchester native joining us from Mississippi. Hi, Kathy. Glad you could join us. So I do have 6 o'clock. And as you all joined, the recording has started for this program. I want to welcome you all. I'd also like to let everybody know that this recording will be posted on the AARP YouTube channel which we will put that link in the chat. My name is Mary. I am one of your hosts this evening from AARP. I'm also a lead volunteer with AARP New Hampshire. And working with me today is my staff partner, Ashley Davis. She's going to be monitoring the chat. So please feel free to put any comments or questions in the chat because we would love to hear from you. At AARP New Hampshire, we do focus on the health, the financial security, and the social connections that are critical to the well-being of the 50 plus in the Granite State. We do our work through targeted advocacy at both the state and the federal levels, with compelling engagements of the 50 plus community statewide. And we also serve as a trusted source for information with our members and the public. Our presentation tonight will be fun and lively discussion about planning for 2026 and making it your year to shine with the Old Farmer's Almanac and AARP New Hampshire. Our hosts today are Carol Kinnear and Teresa Reed. Carol is the editor for the Old Farmer's Almanac. She is an author, an educator from New Hampshire. Teresa is an intuitive reader and author with more than 30 years experience. Together, they're going to help us create our best year ever. So, Carol and Teresa, thank you so much for joining us, and we can get started.
Great. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much, Mary and AARP New Hampshire. We're thrilled to be here. When we think about best days, right? If you knew the best day to do something, life could be a whole lot better. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. It's the best time of year to make New Year's resolutions. It's still January, and that's why we're here. Yes, I'm the editor of the Old Farmer's Almanac, and I'm someone who has actually thought a lot about planting by the moon, planting by the zodiac, but not so much all the other things that we can use the planetary influences and astrological influences to plan things. Though I certainly am well familiar with the best days that we have in the almanac, which we'll learn more about tonight. And so Teresa, who's here, not only has she been doing this for 30 years, she's a tarot reader, but she has dozens and dozens of books that she's authored, and she's just an incredible resource. We're thrilled to have her as the contributing astrologer to the Old Farmer's Almanac. She's not your average expert. I love this on her bio. She can use some colorful language now and then, quotes rappers, and she's obsessed with pop culture. So people have always come to her for, they don't want the woo-woo fluff. They just want the straight shot of how can I improve my life. So tonight, just to let you know, here's how the order of things will be. I'm going to let Teresa introduce herself also. Maybe I'll do that now. Teresa, please welcome our guests.
Thank you, Carol. First of all, everyone, I'm really happy to be here tonight with you. I love talking astrology. Carol already gave a great introduction. I'm Teresa Reed. I'm better known as the Tarot Lady. I've been doing this work for a very long time, and I am obsessed with tarot, obsessed with astrology. And I also have 3 planets in Virgo, so I love to plan. And this best days thing is right up my alley.
Cool. So we're going to talk about the best days, just a little bit of history about it in the almanac, why it's there. And planting by the moon, which many people know about from the almanac. And then Teresa's going to talk to us about the astrology of the moon and how she finds and calculates those best days. We're going to look at February, which is a super exciting month in terms of all of this information. There's a solar eclipse that's going to happen and Mercury retrograde. So we're going to talk about all that, and we'd love your questions. So to start out, why is astrology, in the Old Farmer's Almanac? From the beginning, 1792, our founder made our mission to be useful with a pleasant degree of humor. And I think useful is right where this comes in. Best Days is truly one of the most popular features in the publication. I get phone calls every week from people my favorite is like when I hear from someone who says, I'm in my barn, I don't have my almanac, but I need to know the best day to make sauerkraut. Or cut my hair. I really love, and people can find this on almanac.com. It is in the printed edition as well for people really wanting to plan it out. It's for all ages. My niece, who's 25, uses it religiously. And then it's so popular that in our 2027 edition of the Almanac, our senior editor, Tim Goodwin, has written a story that we'll share next year about the best days. He took a year and he did things like pickle and sell things and ask for a loan, all according to the best days chart. And he tells us how it went. So it is a very popular feature for us. This is what it looks like in the publication. It's a 2-page spread, and then all those little boxes are like this for every month of the year for all of the things that we map out for best days. So, as I said, astrology was always in the almanac, but it was kind of hidden. It was in the calendar pages, which this is February 2026, and pages in 1826 looked much like this. However, if you can see my pointer, they had a little more going on right about here, in which they told what was the astrological placement for the moon and how it would shift, which is what Teresa is going to bring us through later. So it was really included here for a long time, aside those calendar essays. And then, so the first real reference we see is in 1951, and you'll see it says something here. The moon most favorable columns give the superstitious times when the phase of the moon is right for the crop indicated. So we're calling them superstitions. This is editor Rob Sagendorf. And, this is, I think, how I read this is Rob finally saying the readers want this. From the beginning, the Almanac has succeeded because our readers tell us what they want. And what I see here is that it's starting to creep in. Our founder, Robert B. Thomas, was an astronomer. So it kind of makes sense that he resisted. He knew that astrology belonged in the Almanac, but because astrology and astronomy were the same thing until the 17th century, he was in the astronomy field. It was almost like you have to sort of demonize the other. And I think for some time he resisted having it. So that's my theory. So it finally comes in, and you'll see how it comes in more and more. So the next year, 1952, we have the Man of Signs. And Teresa, you have a little story about the Man of Signs. Maybe that would be a good time to share that.
I do. So my family are farm folks, and back in the day, my grandmother lived on a farm with her sons, and we would go visit all the time. And my uncle had a stack of true crime magazines, which I was obsessed with. And I shouldn't have been reading them, by the way, because they gave me nightmares. But there was always a farmer's almanac, always a farmer's almanac. And of course, my sister and I would read through that, and we were really intrigued with this man of the signs. So that was actually my first introduction to astrology. And we couldn't understand it because we were children, but the image was fascinating, and the astrology signs. And it was something that we still, talk about those old magazines from back then. But I didn't think then that I would one day be writing for the Old Farmer's Almanac, so it became full circle. But we were absolutely, again, obsessed. That was our first introduction to it.
And also in the 2026 edition, Teresa has written a great story about the history of the Man of the Signs, and it's following its placement in almanacs through time, and it's really fascinating. So here he is in 1952, and editor writes that the Man of the Signs first began appearing in almanacs in the 15th century, and he is regarded highly only by astrologers and the foolish, he writes. However, these two categories include millions of otherwise sensible people. I love that line. So, he says, we give this to you at the first time at your request in our long history. And so this is really when the reaction is really starting to happen. And so we talk about further down, it's under this picture in the 1952 edition, and it talks about the moon's place in the zodiac forms the basis of these superstitions. And it talks about the favorable signs for planting, and it gives those. So this is really the first time we see it getting fleshed out. In 1953, again, we're seeing a little bit more. We're talking about those superstitions, but now it's kind of at the top of the page, and more about the first time we see this idea that flowers that and crops that bear fruit above ground grow better in the waxing moon, and that those root crops do better in the waning moon, things that grow underground, which is something that we still talk about all the time. So then in 1966, we see more detail. We're getting a whole planting table. And again, if you can read this, we talk a little bit more about those favorable times. And now we're connecting them. We're giving people a graph to do that. In 1970, we see the planting table, which now doesn't really even talk about superstitions. It's really just linking people to those astrological signs and the planting, the favorability of planting. And then by 1986, you can see what really ends up becoming the grid of the best days start by saying that it's not just about planting, but it's about these other things. It's about dental care and hairdos and fishing, travel and romance, things that we all make decisions and do things around. So 1986 is really when we see it start to become fully fledged. But the gardening by the moon, I just wanted to say a little bit more about that. So this is from today's almanac, which we have six pages, I think, dedicated to this. We have the moon's astrological place. We talk about gardening by the moon signs. It's this bigger chart where we talk about all these crops from celery to endive to kale and when to plant them by the moon signs, the favorable signs. So it's quite extensive these days, and we still have the man of the signs and the eclipses and the Mercury retrograde. So we have all of that included. And then in 2025, we go so far as to do a major feature on really explaining to people what is the idea about the moon and how the tides of earth and dirt are just like the tides of water are affecting the plants. And that's what people are doing when they're planting by the moon. So that's kind of my wrap up. Do we have any questions about that part of things? Maybe not yet. So Teresa, do you want to talk about the moon's astrological place?
We did have one question before you guys go to the next section. Sure. We had someone wondering if there were different best days to do things based on your particular sign.
That's a really great question. So there are some general accepted things that you do on certain days. It doesn't matter what sign you are. So for example, and we'll go over a couple little tidbits here, but I'll just jump ahead. It's always considered best to get your dental work done when the moon is in Virgo. It doesn't matter if you're a Virgo, if you are a Scorpio, if you are a Gemini. It is considered the best day. The reason why is because Virgo has a lot to say about health, but also a lot to say about cleanliness. And it's believed that surgeons tend to be more, and doctors and dentists tend to be more precise, and they're very good at getting to the details when the moon is in Virgo. So for that, it doesn't matter at all. However, there may be certain things that are better for you based on your sign. So for example, in business astrology, which is something I love, your power day is considered the day when your sun sign matches up with the moon sign. So for example, when the moon is in Gemini, I'm a Gemini, that's going to be a good day for me to schedule meetings and negotiations and to do anything that is going to give me the advantage. When the moon is in the opposite of my sun sign, which would be Sagittarius, those are considered my weekdays. That would not be the day to go negotiate a car loan. It would not be the day for me to go into a high-powered meeting if I want to have the advantage. So you can use it personally, but there are also some things that are very, very accepted just generally. I hope that makes sense. Does that answer your question? I'm assuming it does. So anyhow, so let's talk about the moon's astrological place. The moon is very, very important. And like Carol said, the moon controls tides and controls the earth. So it has a lot to say about planting. But also, we are to some degree controlled by the moon too. When you think about women's cycles, for example, we tend to be also feeling the effects of the moon on that. We can even find that we feel the effects of the moon on how we feel emotionally. You know, there's a lot of, for example, horror stories about the full moon bringing out, you know, the werewolf, and people act a little bit crazier under the full moon. And when I used to bartend, I can say nobody turned into a werewolf, but around the full moon, we tended to have people act up a lot more. So it was never a night I liked to work. But the moon's astrological place, so the moon changes signs every 2.5, like 2.5 days. So every time the moon changes signs, there's like a different flavor to the moon. For example, when the moon is in Aries, we tend to have a lot of energy. So that is like, wow, you might find when the moon is in Aries, you wake up, you get out of bed and you're ready to roll. Whereas when the moon is more in a Taurus sign, we're ready to slow down. We want to cozy up. We want to mellow out. And so in general, the astrology of the moon is wherever the moon is, it dictates kind of like the vibe or the feeling that's out there. And then that can dictate how the public is feeling, how we're feeling. But also, each sign has different things it's associated with. And that's how we start picking the different days. So again, going for example with our Virgo moon, we know the Virgo moon is incredible for cleaning, decluttering, dental work. It's also good for getting pets. So if you're thinking, well, gee, I really want to buy a pet, that would be a Virgo moon. Why? It is because all of these themes and topics fall under Virgo's rulership. Each sign, again, has different things that they are in charge of, so to speak. So Virgo is one example there for those things. But what would you do, for example, when the moon is in Scorpio? That is a great day for research. It is also the most psychic day of the month. So you've got about 2 days where your intuition is going to be really plugged in. And it's also going to be, again, incredible for your research, for going deep. It's also a very good moon for financial management. So again, very different from the Virgo moon. They all have a different flavor. So what astrologers do when we are looking at the moon, we're looking at, again, what is the flavor of the day? And what are the things that are attributed to that sign? And how can I work with that? So those are the things that we tend to think about when we are looking at the astrology of the moon. Now, I will also say, astrology is very complicated. It is a huge topic. There's so many other things that we look at when we are doing things like picking a best day. So we look at retrogrades. We look at, things of that nature too. But the moon in general, for our best days, that's going to dictate a lot of what we make our choices on, if that makes sense. All right. So let's talk about an ephemeris. So I have to tell you all a funny story. My husband is very smart, and he always thinks he's smarter than me. He's a Virgo. I'm a Gemini, so we have smart wars. And many years ago, he was trying to prove he was smarter by talking physics with me. And so I thought, I don't like the way this conversation's going. So I pulled out an ephemeris. I'm going to show you an ephemeris in my hands before we go to the screen. And I said, okay, look at this, buddy. And all of a sudden I started doing math and all this other stuff. And my husband said, that's actually pretty complicated. So I got a little bit of my props that day. I don't know if I've ever won the smart war with him. We're always like fighting about that. But that showed him that, hey, this stuff isn't as easy as it looks. So this is an ephemeris. I'm going to show you, if you want to buy your own ephemeris, you can find them online. But this is the one generally that we use. And we're going to get a close-up real soon, I promise. Carol's got a page for you. And the ephemeris is basically a book of days. It tells you where all the planets are, what signs they're in, what degrees they're in, what minute they're in. So they really give us this amazing opportunity to look at where everything is at a glance. I can go back and look at, the day I'm born, and I can see everything that was going on that day. I can look ahead 10 years from now, and I can look at that ephemeris and get a feel for what might be coming down the road. So that is what an ephemeris is. Another ephemeris I mean, when you first look at these things, and you can see it on the screen here, it is like a lot of like, oh my God, it looks complicated. For people who are very new to astrology and maybe a little intimidated by an ephemeris, one thing I do recommend, besides the Old Farmer's Almanac, is also a daily planetary guide, because this will tell you where everything is, and it's a little bit more simple to follow. So I highly recommend that if you are just new to astrology. But now we see the ephemeris for February 2026 right in front of us. And this one here, it's an Eastern time zone. There are different time zones. Generally, in the one that I have here on my desk, that is calculated in Greenwich Mean Time. So when you are doing calculations, depending on your time zone, you have to make sure that you are converting the time. The ones that we could find online, though, they're really nice because they do the dirty work for you, which I really appreciate when I'm in a pinch and in a hurry. So when we look at the February 2026, you'll see the word day. And if you go down that column, that is showing you the day of the month, including, what day it was in. So we can see the first is Sunday. And then when we go through the top of the ephemeris, those little glyphs on top symbolize the planets. So we can see the moon. We can all probably recognize the moon symbol. But we have the sun, we have the moon, we have the nodes. We have Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So all the way across the top, we can see the main planets, and they're always in order. It's never out of order. By the way, there are two different branches of, there's actually many different branches of astrology, but you'll hear oftentimes traditional and modern astrologers fighting over Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are for modern astrologers, and some more traditional astrologers kind of poo-poo them because they believe we don't need those planets. We already had a system established. But as a modern astrologer, I do think we're selling ourselves short when we ignore those planets. And those planets have a lot going on this year. They're very important. I'll get to that in a minute. So now, if you go to where the moon is, the moon column, Carol, it's like not day, but we go 2 over. You'll see the moon symbol. When you go to the moon symbol and you start scrolling down, you can see the signs. And so we can see, nope, go over a little bit more. One more column right there, where the little moon symbol is. And then when we go down that column, you can see it starts out with a Leo moon. Those glyphs represent the zodiac sign. And so we can look down and we can see astrologers are looking at, okay, when are they changing signs? And so we are looking to that column to find out where the moon is. Now, if you go down to where it says planetary data underneath the big chart, planetary data also shows you, it's called ingresses, and ingress means a planet is changing signs. So if we go down to the planetary data section, we can see that Mercury, for example, is changing signs. It's going into Pisces on the 6th at 5:47 p.m. Eastern time. So that little section is kind of like a cheat sheet that also gives you the ability to see where they're changing. Below planetary data ingresses, it shows stations. Now, what does station mean? Station means a planet is turning retrograde or turning direct. Direct means it's no longer retrograde. So you'll look for a symbol D next to the planetary glyph, means it's turning direct. And the R thing that looks like a little doctor symbol, that's retrograde. So where you see stations, that little section on the bottom to the left, that is showing that in the month of February, we have 2 planets that are moving from direct or to retrograde. Now, if you swing all the way over to the right side of that chart and you go down to that little bottom section, we see phases and eclipses. So that shows you the phases of the moon. And the phases of the moon are very important for certain things astrologically. Sometimes we want to pick something when there's a new moon. Other times we're looking at the waning moon, which happens after the moon is full, to pick different things for our best days. And also in that section, we can see where it says solar eclipse and lunar eclipse. And if that section has some information in it, it means, oh my goodness, we have a solar eclipse coming or a lunar eclipse. And this month we will have that solar eclipse, which I'll be talking about in a second. So that's really, in a very fast, down and dirty way, how we find information in the ephemeris. Now, if you notice, we see a lot of numbers, right? Those numbers are on the left side of a glyph. Those are going to be the degree the sign is in. And on the right side of the glyph, that's the minutes. So some astrology, some math is involved in this. And that can scare a lot of people if you don't like math. And just for the record, y'all, I was supposed to get an F in geometry class. My teacher actually passed me. And I said, I'm never going to use geometry. And of course, next year I get into astrology, and astrology is a lot of geometry. So some of the things that we're looking at is not just the phase of the moon, but we want to look at, is the moon in a good angle to Pluto? A lot of things we choose will be about Pluto. Why? Because Pluto's about our willpower. That's why, again, when traditional astrologers say, forget about Pluto, I'm like, wait a minute, Pluto's really important, actually. So we might look and see, is that moon in a happy angle with Pluto? Because that might tell me that that's going to be a good day to quit smoking. Is that moon in, a disharmonious, is it in disharmony with Pluto? That might be a day where maybe my willpower is not that strong. So we're not just looking at the moon. In some cases, we're also looking at what is that moon doing with these other planets. So it can get a little complicated, a little sticky there. But once you get the hang of it, it's actually not that hard. You just have to understand these angles and when they're in harmony. By the way, angles are called aspects. So the aspects are sometimes really important. Before I go on any further, does anyone have any questions so far? I mean, that's a mouthful. And again, it can seem very intimidating. Once you get used to it, it's not as hard as you think. But if anyone has any questions about the ephemeris, please right now let me know. And I'll talk a little bit more about some planning that we can do for February and for the year ahead. Any questions? Okay, I don't think I see anything coming in. That's fine. So we're going to talk about February. And I did want to say also, when you are looking at these best days, really pay attention to them. They do work. I'm someone who's been using best days for a long time. I use best days for my business. I use best days to schedule those dentist appointments, although they're not always available on the days I want. I use the best days for my writing practice. I use them a lot, and I've been using best days for an incredibly long time because it does work. So do know that when you work with those best days, it will work with you, because what we're doing is we're moving in the flow. That's how I tend to look at astrology. Astrology isn't hard and cold predictions. It's showing the flow of energy. And when we're working with the flow, we are more likely to have things go our way. And I do like to have things go my way a lot. Okay. So Bronwyn asks, and the ephemeris can be found in the Almanac. So in the Almanac, you're going to have your best day spelled out for you. You are also going to have a lot of astrological information in here. I don't think it has a full-on ephemeris, but it has everything you absolutely need. Of course, it is practical. And we're all about practical at the Almanac, and, I'm all about practical too. So it's going to have everything in there that you need. Gail said, I use it to wean my son from breastfeeding. It works like a charm because, again, you're working with energy. So February is a very big month. And I'm going to say this, 2026 is a big year astrologically. It is huge. First of all, we have the outer planets, which are, if we include Jupiter and Saturn, but Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto are all changed. Pluto's already changed signs, but Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn are changing signs, and Jupiter too. Jupiter's not as, in my opinion, as important as these ones. And the reason why, when Neptune and Uranus and Pluto change signs, they change signs rarely. They are in a sign for a very long time. And when they're in a sign, what they do is they tend to affect all of us in a profound way over time. So what happens is we can see a lot of cultural changes happening because those signs move very, very slowly, and they can give us a feel for what those cultural changes are going to be. So one of the big things that's happening in February is Saturn is going into Aries on the 13th. That's big. Saturn is the planet of structures. It's a planet of restrictions and lessons. And in Aries, it's like we are starting a whole new story. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, by the way. And so what that means is for a lot of us, we are now coming into a time where we want to think about what are some of the new structures that I need to set up in my life. So, for example, one of the things that I'm working on this year is preparing for my retirement and getting really serious about it because Saturn in Aries is perfect to get ready for the new phase. I'm a few years away from retiring, and that is something I'm very focused on. So I know this year's going to be good for that. And so February is when that ball starts rolling. Now, Neptune, by the way, is already going into Aries at the end of January, January 26th to be precise. Neptune is going to be in Aries for about 14 years. It stays there a long time. And Neptune is about our dreams, our visions. And going into Aries, Aries again, first sign, we have a chance now to create a new vision for ourselves. So one of the things that I think we need to be thinking about, whether you are already retired or moving towards that, what's your dream? What's your vision? Where do you want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now? We have a lot of time to start thinking about the new dreams and maybe the dreams that no longer fit us. And we can start really sketching something out. Now, on February 20th, Saturn and Neptune are coming together in an aspect called the conjunction. This is huge. It has not happened in Aries for a long, long time. And what this is going to feel like is a reset for us personally, but also a reset for the collective. And so we might see a lot of shifts happening globally and new leaders stepping up, new people coming into power as the old guard starts to pass the baton. So we're going to see a lot of changes happening. Here in the US, we might see a lot of people retiring and a lot of new, younger people ready to stand up and say, hey, it's time for us, maybe the millennials, to start getting involved in things in their community. So there's going to be a lot of change happening in that way. And again, for us on our own, we want to think about our dreams, the dreams we want to build, the dreams we want to let go of, the structures that we need to build. All of those things are good to be focused on. Now, not only is that happening in February, we also have this new moon solar eclipse. So eclipses are considered wild cards because they're unpredictable. And think about back in the day, I always think what it must have been like for like cavemen to see these eclipses. It was probably really frightening. So we have a lot of vibes around eclipses because, you know, back then people thought, oh my gosh, the world is ending. Well, we know now that the world does not end on an eclipse, but eclipses do signal that something's getting ready to change. This particular eclipse is not only a new moon solar eclipse, it is the beginning of the Chinese Lunar New Year, and it's going to be the fire horse year. Now, I want you to think about this for a second. Saturn in Aries, Neptune in Aries, fire horse. That's a lot of fire. And a fire horse year means we are ready to get things moving. This is not the time to sit around and say, well, what should I do? It's a time to look around and say, what can I do? And what do I want to do? And let me start getting that started now instead of waiting for something to happen. So a lot of us are going to feel like we're kind of like finding our passion and our fire. And do know that new moon solar eclipse, it could bring surprises. It could bring new beginnings that we were not expecting. And because it's in Aquarius, Aquarius is all about community, the collective, justice, social justice mostly. It is about all for one and one for all. And one of the things that we want to be thinking about with this eclipse is our community. Do we have good support around us? Have you neglected your friendships? Is it time to start maybe letting some friends go that aren't really supportive, that maybe you don't align with any longer? What are some of the people or groups I'd like to get involved in that could be meaningful? So the solar eclipse is a wonderful time to initiate new friendships, new group activities, to get involved in things with community. Community is so important as we get older. So what a wonderful thing to be focusing on in February. Now, Oh, by the way, that also is going to be suggesting new leaders. So I think one of the big themes this year is new leaders. And one of the themes for all of us is new beginnings, period. We also have Mercury retrograde coming. And I want to do the sad trombone number, wah, 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 wah. Because there's so much that we're going to hear about Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde gets a bad rap, okay? And it's true, it's funky. Mercury retrograde happens 3 times a year, and it lasts for about 3 weeks. There's always a shadow period before and after, and some of us who are sensitive can feel that Mercury's about to station retrograde. I always feel it before it happens, by the way. And then once it happens, it actually feels a little bit like relief, like, oh, good, it's finally here. But what Mercury retrograde is all about, Mercury is the trickster planet. So it's a little bit like Murphy's Law when it's retrograde. Mercury is also associated with the topics of communication and travel, learning, our daily little habits and routines. So, and also technology falls under Mercury's realm. It also falls under Uranus's realm too. But what happens when a planet stations retrograde, from here on Earth, it looks like it's going backwards. It's not. That's impossible. It's just slowing down its orbit. And so because it's slowing down its orbit, it means the themes that are associated with that planet tend to operate differently. So when Mercury's retrograde, oftentimes we find that travel's a little bit bumpy. We could experience communication problems, travel issues, including our vehicles. Sometimes we can experience misunderstandings, or we put our foot in our mouth. And, these are things that can happen. But if we are prepared, not scared, Mercury retrograde, we can get ready for it. We can plan for delays. We can carve extra time in our travel to make sure that we get where we need to go. And for the love of all things, it's a good time to back up your computer before Mercury retrograde, because Mercury retrograde can often lead to computer fails. And 2 quick examples. I had a 60,000 word manuscript, and for some reason, because I guess I thought I was invincible, I didn't back it up. Mercury retrograde came along and wiped out my manuscript. I had to start from scratch. Learn from my errors. And the last 2 Mercury retrogrades in 2025, all of a sudden my check engine light came on, and my beloved car, I learned, was dying. So I had to order a new car, and I ordered it during the Mercury retrograde. It took almost 4 months to get there, and it arrived during a Mercury retrograde. And I'll tell you right now, I waited until Mercury stationed direct before I went in and signed that contract, because one thing I know, do not sign contracts in Mercury's retrograde. So it was a huge pain, but now I've got my car and all is working well. So that's Mercury retrograde. And by the way, all the planets can go retrograde except the sun and the moon. The sun and the moon never go retrograde. If somebody ever tells you they're retrograde, they don't know what they're talking about. But every one of them can go retrograde. The one we tend to feel the most is Mercury. But every other planet, if they go retrograde, they can also give us a little impact. And we have to look at those when we're doing some of our best days. For example, we never start a new business when it's Mercury or Mars retrograde. Never. Generally, what happens when Mars or Mercury retrograde, but I find especially Mars, if I see a new business go up, I will always say this, and my kids laugh at me. I'm like, let me look at my watch. That business is not going to make it. And they always fail. It is very, very hard to get your business off on the right foot. So those retrogrades are actually pretty important. So those are some of the big things coming up for February. February is, I want you to think of February like it's getting a ball rolling. It's clarifying things, and it's your cosmic nudge to begin creating your dream, to plan for your new future, and to really embrace community. Community is everything, especially as we get older.
Thank you. I have a question for you, Teresa, and there may be others. I get this a lot from people who say, it's Mercury retrograde, but I already had this thing planned, like literally buying a house and signing something, and it's sort of after the fact. And what can you do? Is there anything in that situation where you can't change the date, or you don't think you can? And so that causes people stress.
Well, first of all, don't stress. That's the number one thing. Don't stress. Sometimes there are things that happen that you have no planetary control over. Now, my husband likes to think I'm a control freak, and I'm guilty because I do plan everything by astrology. But there are times where I can't. That maybe, you suddenly have a tooth infection, and the only day you can get in is when the moon is in Cancer. Well, you're going to go in and you're going to get it done. Or maybe you have a trip plan and you find out, oh my God, it's Mercury retrograde. It doesn't matter, you're going to go. Or like Carol's example, you are closing on your house. That's the only day they can do it. You're going to go and do it. But what we want to do when it's retrograde, we don't want to first of all live our life in fear. Instead, we want to say, okay, deep breath. I'm going to pay very close attention, which, by the way, if you're signing a contract, you should anyways. But I would be going over that contract with a magnifying glass and a fine tooth comb. That's the thing you want to do. You just want to exercise extra caution. If, for example, let's say I had to go into an important meeting during Mercury retrograde, and let's say the moon was not in my sun sign, I would not like that. But I would know then to do more listening than speaking and to pay attention to what deals are being put on the table in front of me before I sign anything. I might even look to see if I can kind of like play with time a little bit and request more time. So, you really want to be strategic with it, not scared.
Great. Do we have any other questions at this time that we can answer?
Eileen asked, does it include void of course moon? Are you asking about the ephemeris or are you asking about best days? And by the way, for those who do not know what over best days, we do look at that, but it's not always as important because here's the thing: when we pick the best days, we're looking at the day. And if you want to get really granular, you can look at another book to find out when the moon is void. And here's the thing about a void moon for people who don't know what we're discussing. So void moons, what that means is, let's say the moon is in Aries and the moon makes an angle to Pluto. And then it doesn't make any more angles for 12 hours until it goes into another sign. That period is called the void period. And void moon periods are actually generally good for tying up loose ends, taking care of business. They're just not that great for starting new things. So in the best days, we look at them to some degree, but those days are for like the whole day. So that would actually require some real like microscopic things. So what you want to do if you really are freaked out by void moons, which by the way, I've never ever found them to have too much of an effect on me, just FYI. But what you can do is you can look at an ephemeris and you can look at what is the last aspect, and that will tell you when the last aspect is. And then if you want, you can wait until the moon goes into another sign, or you can schedule something before that last aspect. So if you want to get super granular, but generally, they're not as important as you think. In my opinion, it's like, okay, let me pay attention to it, but unless you're doing something like launching a new product for your business, void moons are really not that impactful. Use those days, use that time in a void moon to just slow down, to pay attention, tidy up, tie up loose ends, but don't give that as much weight as what sign it's in. I hope that makes sense. Bronwyn said, can you repeat those 5 or so things for February? Got to get the ball rolling in the last 2, but missed the middle ones. So I'm going to be really super brief. January 26th, Neptune goes into Aries. It'll be there for 14 years. We want to think about the new dream, our new chapter. Aries is always a new beginning. It's significant. Saturn goes into Aries on February 13th. Now it's time to think about the new structures. What structures do we need to have in place for the new things, our new chapter? We're all beginning a new chapter this year. Then on February, I think it's the 17th, we have that solar eclipse. It is new moon. It is in Aquarius. And that is going to give us a lot of illumination about community and friendship. Thank you, Carol. And it is giving us an opportunity to really start moving towards new communities, new friendships, or even resurrecting old friendships that are meaningful. Community is going to be everything. Then the next thing that we want to look at is also the fire horse. I'm going to be ready to get rolling. On February 20th, Saturn and Neptune are coming together, and they haven't done that in a very, very, very long time. And that is going to really be creating that feeling again, like this is a fresh start, something's changing. And we might see new leaders emerging. It's like a big cultural change. And the baton is getting ready to be passed, is really what it's going to be. And one of the things I would like to say too, and I know, as somebody who is a woman of a certain age, I'm working as much as I can, as long as I can, but it's very important to pass the baton. And so I'm more than happy to tell someone else, here, you can do this for me, like shovel my, you guys can go ahead and shovel my walk. I ain't shoveling that. So we can also look at ways that we can pass the baton too. Okay. Amber says, what or how do we know why a planet has the importance they do in different areas? Because there is traditionally accepted themes that fall under each sign. And by the way, I don't make those rules. Somebody said, well, why is this under this? I said, I don't know. Some guy decided that. I don't know. But certain things are connected to different signs. So, for example, Aries rules the head. Aries is the ram. Aries is about courage and risk and fresh starts. So those are all things that fall under Aries realms. If we go to the next sign, Taurus, what falls under Taurus? Comfort, security, financial security, beauty, art. I know when the moon is in Taurus, I'm definitely wearing my red lipstick. I want to look good. So again, I didn't make the rules. Somebody decided this, and that is why these standard things are there. There's a book, I forget the title of it off the top of my head, but it's by Rex Bills, I think it is, that tells you everything that falls under every sign. And all I got to say is I think some Virgo made up all these ideas because everything has a place. You can look up anything in that book. You can look up something like plumbing, and it will show you under what realm, under what sign or planet it falls under. Okay. What else am I seeing here? Okay. Catherine says, so when you hear the words trine, conjunction, sextile, those refer to the angles the planets are at. Yes, those are called aspects. So there are 5 main aspects. One is a conjunction. That's when the planets are in the same sign and very close in degree. A conjunction intensifies the energy. So, for example, if Mercury is conjunct Mars, we tend to be very mentally active. Okay, but conjunctions can sometimes go a little sideways. We can also lose our temper very fast. Okay, so conjunctions just intensify things. Sextile, the planets are 60 degrees apart. That's favorable energy. It's harmonious. A square, they're 90 degrees apart. That is challenging. What you want to think of as a square, it's a 90-degree angle. It's like you're in a corner and you're fighting your way out of that corner. Okay. A trine is 120 degrees apart. It's very favorable. It's easy, breezy, super awesome. So the energy is super favorable. And then oppositions are when they are in opposite signs. And so oppositions are challenging like squares, but in oppositions, we look for the middle to find the way out. And now, by the way, there's also minor aspects. There's main aspect patterns. There's a lot. But if you know those ones, you're good to go. You'll start to understand astrology really well. Arlen says, my question about Tibetan calendar was not, I didn't see the question.
Posted it again underneath. So there's a question from Deb, and then right underneath is I copied and pasted Arlen's question. I missed it earlier too. So thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. I will put, how do your predictions compare with those described in the Tibetan moon-based calendar? I don't work with the Tibetan moon-based calendar, so I don't know what their system is like. So I actually can't even give you an answer on that because I'm not familiar with how they do their predictions. There are different schools of thought for astrology things, and I have no idea. So that, I don't know. I really don't know. It's not something I work with. It's the same like astrology. Astrologers will have different house systems. And if you want to hear astrologers argue, ask them about which house system they prefer. They're all going to have a different opinion. And that is, again, a system I don't work with. So I'm not sure if they're similar or different. And Deb says, I had no idea the discussion would be a lot of astrology. I'm overwhelmed by all this information. Is there a beginner's guide to understanding all that you are talking about? A daily planetary guide. First of all, the Farmer's Almanac is going to be the simplest way to understand best days. That's where I got started with best days. So start there, Deb. You cannot go wrong with the Farmer's Almanac. It will get everything squared away for you. And once you start moving with the energy, you'll see how well it works. Like the example we had about weaning a child, okay? The daily planetary guide, this is something that Llewellyn creates, is also good because it'll show you all those little aspects as they're happening so you can see if there's a void moon. And, if you decide that's important to you, you can work with that or choose not to. I also wrote a book called Astrology for Real Life. You can see it on the screen. That is a beginner's astrology book. If you want to learn astrology and learn how to competently read a chart, that's the book you want to start with. But again, if you don't want to learn any of that, if this is like, forget this is math, I hate this, all you need is the Farmer's Almanac, because those best days, it gives you everything you need. All the important stuff is there. And by the way, it feels overwhelming because astrologically, we are in a very, very important year. So there's a lot going on. That's the rulership book. Thank you, Sophia. Yes, the rulership book, A Directory of Astrological Correspondences by Rex E. Bills. Thank you. That book is the nerdiest book you will ever find in your life. It's like a little, it's like basically a book of lists where everything belongs. And again, who made up these rules? I don't know, but we don't find lungs under Sagittarius. We find them under Gemini. So that is how it works. Somebody else raised a hand, I think.
I see that. Can you view that? I don't have a, did somebody raise their hand? Can they speak, or I'm not sure. we have a few more minutes, and I had one other question for you. If maybe some others come in, is, at the end of last year, Teresa, we had something like 3 supermoons, I think, in a row. I think we've got one later on this year, and we haven't talked about that. I just wondered, we get a lot of questions about the supermoon, but do they have some kind of effect? That's when the moon is in apogee. It's closest to us, so it looks bigger in the sky. We all tend to recognize it. It's looming up there. And so I wondered if there's anything that we should think about when we see that supermoon.
The supermoon just adds a little bit of intensity. So let's say, for example, I wanted to get married and I decide I'm going to do it on a supermoon because the moon is in Taurus and it's a supermoon. Well, let me tell you, that is going to be an incredibly romantic day and the feelings are going to be real. Everybody's going to be bawling. So it just intensifies things a little bit.
Great. Are there any other questions on the board? I'm not able to see them, so I'm letting other people tell
so
us.
I found the attendee who had hand raised, and I do have the ability to allow her to talk. So if her hand is raised on purpose, open it up now. So Sharon, if your hand was raised because you had a question, you should be allowed to unmute and ask that question.
I just wanted to say that this has been really informational in the Farmer's Almanac. I've always had one from way back when, but never really learned how to read it. So I wanted to just say that this was really helpful. And I'm going to pick up some more copies and share this link so people can also understand it.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
And we can certainly take more questions if they come in. I just wanted to let people know, I don't think I said at the top that, as our contributing astrologer, Teresa also writes our monthly horoscopes, which you can find every month on almanac.com. And we also have a daily and weekly newsletter, which right at the top of that newsletter, it'll tell you that it's the best day for getting your hair cut to encourage growth or to prune. So, those are other ways to keep in touch. And, I agree. Like when I first really started looking at this, it's still daunting to me. And I learned so much every time that Teresa and I talk. But we do have those aspects and the conjunctions. Those are right in the calendar pages. And we have a key to those symbols. So like Teresa said, it's a good place to begin with some other guides as you go. But that best days table, that's why it's popular, is because we do all the figuring for you. Well, Teresa does.
I think there is a question that came in. Do certain tarot cards relate to the signs? Absolutely. Tarot and astrology are intermingled. And I came to astrology before tarot, but the correlations, absolutely. And you can get a little bit in your head over that too. But for example, the Emperor is Aries, and you can see it right in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck because the Emperor is sitting on a big throne and he's got ram's heads all over the thrones. And by the way, again, I don't know who decided which cards go with what side, but somebody did, and it tends to work. Is there a similar book but tailored to personal finance or the stock market? I don't know off the top of my head. I think there might be one on personal finance. I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen one for the stock market. And if you're looking for politics, off the top of my head, also, I don't think there are books that mention politics. I've got an upcoming book, and in that book, I talk about the Pluto return for the United States. So I talk a little bit about that. But you can find a lot of astrologers online who talk about these things. You can search for them. So what you might want to search for is an astrologer, a business astrologer, a finance astrologer, astrologer for stock market. There's a lot of political astrologers because, you know, the politics, especially the U.S., have been pretty intense for the last decade. So you might have better luck finding somebody who is on a social media platform talking about that stuff.
Is that a wrap on the questions?
I
Got
think
a
that
few
is.
minutes left. Well, thank you so much to everybody who joined us. Fascinating and educational in so many ways. And I am excited for February and all these new beginnings. And I can think of a few things just in my business and personal life where I can already see that this is exactly what's about to happen. So very cool.
Thank you, Carol and Teresa, for such a fantastic presentation. Thank you to everyone in the audience. I love hearing the questions, and I think everybody is in agreement that we learned something new tonight. So we really appreciate your time and connecting with our community. If anyone has questions later, you can always send them to AARP New Hampshire. And keep your eyes on our webpage because we'll be doing more presentations like this with the Old Farmer's Almanac this year. And we're doing this actually quarterly. So we're definitely looking forward to this new collaboration and excited for all of the good things to come. So thank you, everybody here. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Teresa. Enjoy your night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye, everyone. And I did post our YouTube channel link in the chat. It will be posted in a couple of days. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.